Hello, Stephen.
Hi Edgar.
How are you? Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, I can't see you, but
Yeah,
good for you to see me.
Yeah.
And Edgar.
Yes. So, Stephen, you're still new in Toowoomba.
Yep.
You have a very interesting upbringing.
Yeah. So I grew up in Alice Springs.
Yes.
And my father and my grandfather were both missionaries among the Aboriginal people in Central
Your
Australia.
grandfather as well.
Yes. So if you'll indulge me, I'll just go back in time a little bit.
Yes.
My grandfather, prior to the First World War, he was living in Western Poland.
Yes.
And he had felt a calling to be a missionary, but then the First World War came along and he had to enlist, and he became a medic.
Okay.
In the German army. And at some stage when he was off with the German army, the Russians came into his area and they transported his family to Siberia.
Oh.
5 brothers and sisters, or 7 plus his parents. While they were over there, 5 of them died of cholera. And apparently my grandfather's parents were so weak that they couldn't even bury their children. But after the war, they came back with the 2 remaining children. My grandfather was then discharged, and he was still in Western Poland and had to cross over the boundary into Germany to attend a Bible college, a Lutheran missionary school. It was there that he met his wife, Minna.
Yeah, as it happens.
As it happens. And the Hermannsburg Mission Society was seeking to appoint a missionary to Hermannsburg in Central Australia. My grandfather was the 9th person they asked.
Serious?
So 8 people prior to him
Said no.
said no. He said yes. And my grandmother, she had had a bout of tuberculosis, and so was quite, that had impacted her. But they first travelled to Canada and did some more training and English learning, and they came to Australia and travelled up to Central Australia in their Model T Ford.
Oh, no longer the camel trains.
No. This is
Model T Ford.
1926.
Okay.
1926.
Yes.
And so my grandfather then continued the mission work in Hermannsburg, which started in, I think, about 1877.
Yes.
And my father was born there, and at Hermannsburg, and he actually learnt the Aboriginal language Aranda as his first language, along with German at home.
As his first language? Because he was playing with all the Aboriginal kids?
Absolutely,
guess,
yes. Yeah. And he had an Aboriginal nanny.
Okay.
So he learnt German and Aranda together, and then he later went to school at 5 to learn English. And just as a little aside...
That's your dad?
That's my dad, yes. And just as a little aside, I read some research a little while ago that said that if you learn 2 languages in your childhood, you'll put back Alzheimer's or dementia by 6 years. And if you learn 3 languages, you'll put it back by 12 years. So learning more than 1 language is very protective of the brain.
Here we go.
That's interesting.
So,
but I only learnt 1.
But
well, you're right.
But so your dad was, he was missionary there as well?
Yep.
And so you were born there as well?
I was born in Alice Springs, not at Hermannsburg.
Yes.
So I didn't have anywhere near the same upbringing that my dad did.
Yeah. So you actually lived in Alice Springs
yes,
then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my grandfather had a heart for the welfare of the Aboriginal people long before the government took any interest in the Northern Territory. Yeah. And he was advocating for reserves and for a payment and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he was very upset with the cattle companies coming in and taking over the traditional lands.
Yeah, so the missionary is actually protecting Aboriginal land.
Yes,
and,
yes. And my grandfather's medic skills that he learnt were very appropriate, because he was often not only preaching the gospel but binding up wounds and all sorts of things there. And I'm really proud of what my grandfather did in that at a time when we talk of the stolen generation, and government agencies were going around and picking up children. My grandfather kicked them off the mission and did not allow them to take any of the children at a time when they were being taken elsewhere. So
that's good to hear.
That yes, absolutely.
So but he was going against the trend.
Going against the trend. Yeah. Prior to that, like a lot of the stories you hear of German-speaking people in Australia during Second World War, there were sort of accusations made against him having a secret transmitter at Himmelsberg and transmitting, and so they came and took away his wireless.
Okay. Yes.
And confined him to the property, and a lot of crazy things happened during that time.
In Second World War, there was a missionary called Schwartz in Hopevale, far north Queensland.
Okay.
And because he was German, native, he never went back. He came out, I think, as an 18-year-old, and till an old man, he never made it back to Germany. But so he was, from Germany. So the government thought, this is dangerous, and because he was overseeing the Aboriginal community, and he fought for their protection as well, because all the cattle wanted to kick them off and have their land, and he fought really hard. But they interned the Aboriginals as well, because they were considered German, because they were under German, and so they were actually travelling from Hopevale, which is north of Cairns, to Rockhampton, and quite a few of them died because it was suddenly so cold in Rockhampton and the trip, and they are still singing songs about that. And
they were forced to go to...
They were forced because they were Germans.
Oh.
See, they were thought to be not safe.
They were too close to the northern
borders. So, missionary sport. Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, crazy.
Crazy. And, the good news of Jesus Christ to Aboriginal culture. What was the most impacting of the good news of Jesus Christ that connected with the Aboriginal? What were they hearing?
I think there was a lot of fear in the culture.
Yeah.
Because of the spirits and because of enemies.
Yeah.
And so I think the gospel took away a lot of their fear.
Okay.
Took away a lot of their fear.
Yeah.
If you became sick, it was often thought that someone had done that to you.
Yeah, yeah.
They had sung sickness over you or something like that.
And so, they may have, called on the spirits to cause sickness.
Yeah.
Like you can curse someone. And that does happen too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a liberation from some of those constraining or aspects of their culture, which sort of kept them in fear and worry and that sort of thing.
I mean, there was an Aboriginal family that was coming to Living Grace, and then they brought another family member along. And the only reason she came back is that whenever she went to church, the spirits that were tormenting her couldn't.
Wow.
She was at peace there.
Wow.
So, because it was holy space, it was the name of Jesus, and the spirits couldn't move. And when she left again, it started up again, and so that went on for a while, and then she gave her heart to Jesus, and they had to leave. Then she was actually with Jesus. So this is very easy evangelism, because you're talking to spiritually aware people. They know the spirits, and then if Jesus is a stronger spirit and comes full of peace and love, that's what you want to have.
Oh, that's a lovely story.
Yeah, it's good.
Like hearing stories like that.
It's good, and it's good that the demons couldn't move in church. So good to hear.
Yes, very much so.
So we're on the right track. Yeah. So anyway, not making that too long, but I find that fascinating, and probably as time goes on, it'd be good to hear a few of the lessons that come out of it. Any cross-cultural involvement makes you look at your own culture with different eyes. And so there are a lot of lessons in that. And so I look forward to hearing more of it, and the community aspect.
I think the thing there is that there's no perfect culture, is it?
Yes.
Cultures contain God's blessing, but they're also influenced by the devil and a sinful, ungodly world. And so it's good to be able to gain insight and awareness into our own culture.
Yes.
And often we do that by comparing it to other cultures and seeing their strengths, our weaknesses, their weaknesses.
So thank you, Stephen, for sharing, and I hope that interested you a little bit, and now you know his background a bit, you can just ask him a few questions, what it was like And I wonder how Aboriginal language sounds. Like when your dad speaks that language, like what you thought of it.
Ah, well, yes. Talk about speaking in tongues.
Yeah. Anyway, have a most wonderful day.
Okay, yes, you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.